Hey guys, want to investigate this Paul thing a little bit further and show how crazy some of it is. But before I do that, I want to quote R.C. Sproul, who is a partial preterist, um, on some of the problems he sees with this and why he's not a full preterist. Excuse me. In his book, The Last Days According to Jesus, he writes, to maintain that these events, the Olivet teaching, were indeed fulfilled in the first century, one must interpret the relevant passages in a way that makes early fulfillment possible. The most severe obstacle to that is the absence of any historical record that the rapture of the living and the resurrection of the dead occurred. The first difficulty is that Paul's teaching in 1 Corinthians 15 involves, um, wait, I lost my place. Involves propositions and assertions that can be neither verified nor falsified empirically. If one announces or predicts things that will take place in the arena of real history involving physical reality, then empirical verification becomes relevant and crucial. It is unfortunate that the apostle failed to alert the Corinthians and us by extension that he was speaking of a secret, hidden spiritual resurrection. His language certainly suggests something else, particularly as Paul so clearly conjoins the resurrection of our bodies with the resurrection of Christ's body. The resurrected Christ is the first fruits of all who will be raised. If a spiritual body cannot be seen, touched, or handled, is it a body at all? It is one thing to say that our resurrected bodies will be spiritual bodies, but quite another to imply that our resurrected bodies will be merely spirits. The Bible speaks of spiritual bodies. Um, Uh, some interesting stuff in here about Matthew 24, but I'm going to skip that. What I want to do is go back to Paul. Um, so remember, Paul is he's talking to the people in Corinth, right? And he's telling them not to get married, not to do a bunch of stuff because this earth-shattering event's going to happen and life's going to go back to normal. I went through the history of Corinth on the historical encyclopedia website. Nothing happened in Corinth in 70 AD, nothing. So Paul's warning these people about something that's not even going to affect them in the slightest, except invisibly, whatever that means. And remember, we already talked about it with the snatching up. Okay, it's physical. There's no part of you that can be snatched away and have your body still function. So, when you think about the absurdity of the warning itself, telling you not to do this and that, it becomes clear to me that he must have something else in mind. And remember, you're talking about these conflicts and revelations that destroy large portions of life in general in society, parts of the earth, and you're free to reinterpret those if you want, but they basically say what they say. So I don't know if I would feel too comfortable changing those. But I wanted to put this in perspective for you, okay? To have any kind of understanding of what was actually going on back then and the absurdity of a warning and of an event that was going to take place in Jerusalem. Now, you could argue that maybe he didn't know it was going to be Jerusalem, but given the words of the stones being cast down, if he got his teachings from Jesus, I think he would have had to know it was Jerusalem. Um, so what I'm gonna try to do here, I don't know if this is gonna work too well, but I just want to illustrate something to you. I want to show you um, how goofy this actually gets. Move this out the way here. Make sure I can see that on the camera. All right. I don't have all this fancy technology some of these guys have here. Going old school. Bear with me. All right. So, okay. You can see that. It's not the best, but it'll work for now. So, actually, you know what? I'll move this over here. That way I can still see what's going on. So, look, it's infinity. Whoa. So we go over here. Okay, there's Jerusalem, right? That is where all this stuff happened. And Paul is warning people over here what is going to happen to be, get ready for this destruction and all these things that are going to come. Now, you see, by car, it takes 35 hours to get from Jerusalem to Corinth. All right? Now watch this. Watch this right here. On foot, oh, there we go. 429 hours. Okay? 429 hours. Now, if we had a military that was marching, it would take 35.75 days. Okay, that's just traveling by foot. 30 a month. It would take you a month to get there. Okay, and I think it would take an army longer to get there. Now, Titus actually showed up in Corinth, and I think it was like in 67, and what he was looking for wasn't there. Nothing, so he left. The city was not affected. There was no mass persecution or anything like that. The only event in history of note was a earthquake in 77, which destroyed most of the city, which would have nothing to do with anything in 70 AD, obviously, because God's wrath had already been poured out. So I just wanted to point out kind of the absurdity of it when you stop to think about it. Paul giving these warnings of an event that was going to leave the world unaffected. And I'm not going to use the term relatively. It left the world completely unaffected, aside from the falling of Jerusalem and the people that were killed in that area. But when you think back of the Bible passages that are going to take place where it tells you that the destruction is coming and it's going to be on a massive scale, worldwide scale, I want you to think about that. I want you to think about these, and think about this passage, no flesh would be saved. No flesh. It's a catastrophic physical event that they're laboring to describe. And the only way it would make sense to even warn Corinth in the first place to that kind of degree. And like I said, let's, stop and think about that. Don't get married. Don't do, if you're going to put out those kind of warnings, it means one thing. It's that it's not going to matter after this event takes place. Well, it clearly mattered after 70 AD. As life returned to normal, I would be willing to bet that Corinth was completely unaffected. Okay? So, you're talking about an army taking over a month to get to Corinth from Israel. So that's just to put in perspective the time you're talking about. They may not even have heard, or it's possible they may have heard it, but you're talking by land is 2,367 kilometers away. So yeah, it's just weird. It's just weird to even take this perspective and try to apply it to the events in Corinth, because they were unaffected by this. Even in history, they were unaffected. And then think about what he's saying. That's the other thing. All this emphasis on running strong because the Lord's coming soon. All this emphasis. For what? For what? You got Paul telling people to live differently. For what reason exactly? Because, like I said, this teaching and the preterist understanding of it does not carry on after 70 AD. No one points it out. Okay? And you know, it's the Bible, Jewish scripture. It seems to be cyclical. It seems to run in cycles. And to me, the period from Jesus's birth, 270 AD, is just a cycle that denotes like the next phase in the next cycle. And I think you see this common theme throughout the scriptures. But I don't know, maybe that helps you put it in perspective, the kind of warnings that were given to Corinth and how it was unaffected by the fall of 70 AD, and it was left untouched by until an earthquake in 77. And like I said, you're talking about something that is literally what, almost by land anyway, going to be in a neighborhood of 1,000 miles away. So it's just strange. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like I said, the warnings themselves, yeah, all this emphasis on living a certain way because the return of the Lord is soon. It's because you're supposed to, it's common sense to me. It's just Dutch door action. So that's it for this one. Keep this one really short, guys. Like I said, I hope that puts that in perspective for you, at least in a way that you can kind of see the numbers, and give or take the kind of logistics that would be involved in people in Corinth even being concerned with a catastrophic event that took place in Jerusalem. An event, like I said, that was supposed to wipe out large swaths of mankind. And as I said, so bad that no flesh would be saved if it wasn't stopped. 70 AD definitely does not fit that criteria. It does not fit the criteria of being so catastrophic that the world might end behind it. And I wanted to look one other thing. I should have done this before. But let me see. I can't remember the statistical website. But one of the numbers, like I said, you're talking about all flesh being wiped out. In World War II, you amassed a total body count of 14 million people. 14 million. So I don't know, where these other ones even fit into it. Okay, here we go. That's what I was looking. Okay, the fall of Rome in the 5th century, 7 million. The 30 Years' War in the 17th century was 7.5 million. The Zin Dynasty puts you at 10 million. The First World War, 15 million. Under Stalin, 20 million people were killed. In the Mao Zedong conflict, were mostly killed by famine, you had about 40 million human beings died. And their recalculated death toll was in the neighborhood of 66 million for the Second World War total. Not too sure about that one. But I believe, like I said, I was looking on the statistical website. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a Japanese-Chinese conflict, I believe, and it was in that neighborhood. It was almost 60 million people died. And when we start to, when the Bible starts using language about all flesh, it's hard to say that these other body counts of wars would not be a better qualifier for something like that. So let's see. I should have looked this up too beforehand. I apologize. And as far as the siege of Jerusalem, um, occupied by Jewish defenders in 66 AD. And it goes on and on. Josephus claims uh, about 1.1 million people were killed during the siege. The majority of them were Jewish. On that, 97,000 were captured, enslaved, including Simon Bar Giora and John Gascala. So, and as terrible as it is, it really doesn't even move the needle on some of the major top 40 or 50 conflicts in the world today. Well, the world as we know it. So, that's another thing. When you look at the language in the Bible, the body count it's something that would be spiral out of control and destroy the whole world if it wasn't stopped, is the impression that you get. And like I said, you look at Revelations and how those events unfold, and you don't find any language anywhere in the Bible about a continual resurrection. Even Paul's expectations built up to a singular event. And like I said, the day of the Lord is clearly longer than 5 months. Clearly. There's no way around that one. But it culminates in a singular day. And that's what Paul was waiting for, that singular day to take place. And it's clearly defined, and like by the lack of language talking about any kind of resurrection that's continually taking place. So that's it. I'm gonna shut this one down. Like I said, I hope that puts it in perspective for you. God bless.